If you want to become a conscious creator, you have to learn what you're trying to create, and you have to be able to say no to the things that don't feel right to you. Now, how do you know what those things are? You have to be able to connect with your body. What is up, Soul Fam? It's Sundar from Substance Saver Star, and welcome to a new video. Okay, so today I want to talk about the power and the beauty of saying no. So this video was inspired by a conversation I was having with a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who was staying with me and just kind of flew back to the States where his family live. And he has been going through this process of learning to be able to say no. Excuse me, the light is getting very intense. The sun has literally just come to show its face and is smiling down on me. He's been practicing learning to say no and developing boundaries. And I think he's reading a book as well called The Power of No. Now, I haven't read the book, so I don't know, whether it's any good, but he highly recommended it. But I wanted to speak on this because this is something that I have been learning how to do and have been practicing for a couple of years, and it is a very, very important skill to be able to learn on your kind of personal development journey, your spiritual journey, reclaiming your energy. Sorry, I'm just going to put my phone on plane mode so I don't get any notifications. Yes, because it's about boundaries, okay? You need to be able to have boundaries. And a lot of people in the spiritual community will, there's kind of two schools of thought that, one is where, we open ourselves up and we dissolve the ego and we connect to the oneness and there's no separation. And so we must be of service and we must give, give, give. And so that tends to make people very right brain and balanced. The ego is one of the most important things, is one of the most important tools that you will be given when you incarnate onto this planet. So you do not want to transcend it, okay? It protects you, it protects your energy. It's, the vessel through which you channel your higher self in order to do whatever it is that you came here on this planet to do. So don't listen to anybody who tells you that you need to completely dissolve the ego. You need to be able to control the ego, but don't dissolve it. Your ego is your personality. It's important. So, y'all have heard of the law of attraction. So the way I see the power of now, not the power of now, the power of no, is almost like the law of repulsion. Now, law of attraction is just a very oversimplified term for universal laws. You've got the principle of vibration, you've got the principle of correspondence, as above, so below. So, you get yourself, your inner world right, and then the outer world will mirror back to you that which is within. It's obviously got a lot of nuances, but that's it in a nutshell. So with the law of repulsion, how are you going to be able to magnetize what you want to manifest in this world if you, A, don't know what that is, but also B, you don't know what you don't want? Because if you're just going to let, surrender to the universe and just see what happens, you're not in control of your own life. I mean, it is important to do that. And I do feel like, it was a necessary part of my journey because I was trying to so much control a certain outcome in my life, and it didn't end up, happening that way. Life didn't end up going the way I wanted it to go. So I went through a process of surrendering to the universe. And excuse me, I'm just moving the incense. Okay, So I went through a process of surrendering to the universe and just seeing what would come my way. And that was, you know, a wonderful journey for me, especially doing modeling, because modeling, you can never really predict or control how your career is going to go. You can to an extent, but you know, you don't know if a job's going to come in tomorrow or you're not going to work for 2 weeks. So having that kind of surrender was, you know, kind of very important for my career. And I had some amazing, wonderful adventures, and I traveled the world and all of that stuff. You know, if you've been following me for many years, you would have seen all of those vlogs lower down where I was kind of traveling and surrendering. But if you want to become a conscious creator, you have to learn what you're trying to create, and you have to be able to say no to the things that don't feel right to you. Now, how do you know what those things are? You have to be able to connect with your body. So this is the divine feminine, you know, this is what we mean by feminine embodiment, where you connect to your emotions. You start listening to what your heart wants. You start listening to your gut. You start listening to, you know, all those little twinges that you get all over your body. And, you know, studying the Kriya Yoga system has really helped me attune to different parts of my body. And it's like this amazing feedback loop that kind of tells you what's going on with you and what's going on with your emotional state when you're feeling different twinges in different parts of your body. I'll do a separate video talking more about that because I don't want to digress too much. But when you connect with your body, you can get in tune with yourself. And when somebody comes to you wanting your energy, you know in your body, do I actually really want to meet this person? Or am I, like, you know, maybe somebody's messaging you and asking you if you want to go for a coffee, and you don't, like, this happens to me sometimes, and you don't really know this person very well, and you're not sure what they want from you, and you're really busy crushing your goals. Just tune into your body. Do I actually want to go meet this person? Like, you know, and you just say no. And you don't have to, like, you know, I think for people who tend to have like codependent tendencies, which is a lot of us, we're taught to be nice, and we're taught to be polite, and we're taught to, you know, be of service and to help people and all of that stuff. So we feel like we have to, you know, come up with all these different excuses of why we can't come, why we don't want to do it, like, or why we can't do it. Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't because of this, that, and the other. I've got my auntie, or I'm sick, or, you know, or you'll agree knowing that you don't really want to go, and then at the last minute, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm sick. And you know that you didn't want to go. So why waste everybody's time and everybody's energy because you can't be authentic with yourself? Just learn to say no. So this was a situation that you know, I had with him actually. He was coming over to bring some stuff over to my house because he's going back to America, that I'm going to store for him. And he called me. He was supposed to come at like 1 or 2 o'clock. He had a van booked between 1 and 2 o'clock. And this is now the second time that he's planning to come to my house, because the first time things kind of messed up. So between 1 and 2 o'clock, the van was supposed to come, and then he was going to come to my house between 2 and 3. He calls me in the morning. I'm still in bed, you know, drinking my coffee, reading my book, doing my morning routine, meditating, whatever it was. And he starts calling me. I do not like to be disturbed at that time in the morning. It wasn't that early because I'm still a little bit jet lagged, but I answered it, and he was just like, hey, can I come now? And I was just like, why? And he was like, oh, because the van driver people are saying that they can come to my house now, and they're just outside, and, you know, so if I can come now, then that would be great. And I didn't want him to come now because I was still doing my morning routine. I still had a couple of things that I needed to get done before, you know, he was going to come and all of that stuff. So, and I could see that it wasn't even necessarily him being pushy and not respecting my boundaries. It was that he didn't even know how to say no to the van driver, because this is the same friend who's reading the book. And I just said to him, you know, you can say no to them. You know, you had a time slot booked with them. you know, how do they can't just call you and expect that you're going to be ready like 2 hours earlier than planned. You know, you might have been somewhere else, you might have been doing something else, you might have been, you know, at the gym or dropping the kids off to school or whatever else you've got going on. So, you know, he called me back an hour later, and he was just like, yeah, so basically I spoke to them and I said, you know, I haven't even been to the bank to get the cash to pay you. So they were just like, okay, we'll come at the appointed time. And then he got a text message 5 to 10 minutes later saying that they'd cancelled his time slot. So, you know, that's what can sometimes happen when you say no. People show you who they are. So, you know, if you're going to say no, like for example in dating, if somebody's trying to, you know, if you're dating a man and he's trying to like give you the runaround, like let's say you planned a date and, you know, he cancels the day off and asks if you can do the following day, but you've got something planned with your girlfriends, but you really want to see him. You know, it's one of those things. You have to be able to say no to people. And sometimes, you know, people get scared that, you know, like what happened with the van, that if they say no, then other people are going to be angry at them. Well, if somebody can't respect your boundary and your time, they should not be in your life, because they're literally harvesting your energy. It's not a fair energetic exchange. So this is how you can really, using the power of no, you can really start to clean up your field of all the people who are sucking at your energy, who are not respecting your time. Because what happens otherwise, you know, and this, I've observed this in people in my life, I'm not going to say who, but like, you know, various people who are close to me who have problems with boundaries, is they let people get away with certain things and they don't say anything, and then they, you know, they keep on making allowances for these people who are not respecting their time and who are not respecting their boundaries and the fact that they have other things going on. And then they have a huge argument and a huge blow up. And it's just like, it doesn't have to be that way. You can just say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not free on Monday. And it's just like, well, but they really need me to do something for them on Monday, and if I don't, then they're going to have a huge problem, and then they'll say that I'm a bad friend. And it's just like, well, that's not your problem. Like, if you already told them that you had other things to do on the Monday, you don't have to drop what you're doing and inconvenience yourself because they didn't listen or they didn't respect your time. So, you know, since I actually learned it because one of my friends who had previously had some problems with boundary issues started working with a high priestess, and I noticed instantly that she started to be a lot more respectful of her own time. She used to be super nice, super accommodating, and I used to just slot her into my life. So, you know, when we would agree to meet up for coffee or whatever, and she's a very good friend of mine, we would agree to meet up for coffee. Sometimes I'd get a last minute casting come in or a last minute job, and I'll be like, oh, she, you know, she won't mind, she's very flexible, I can tell her. And I wouldn't tell her straight away. Sometimes I would just tell her, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, like I have a casting and I can't meet, can you do like later on, or can you do tomorrow? And she'd be like, no, I can't. And she wasn't nasty about it. She was just like, no, I have something else on. And she didn't give an explanation. There was no apology, because she doesn't need to apologize. And I started to learn that I had to respect her time better. And I saw that this was as a result of working with this high priestess that was really helping her activate her power. And she's actually been on this channel before. I'll link the video, Natural Dance with Laura Cherry. So this was Laura that I saw kind of go through this shift. And I was just like, wow, she's putting up these boundaries and she's so polite and so loving with it. She's just like, no, I can't. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to be a little bit more respectful of her time if I want to actually see her, because now I'm not going to be able to see her all week. And I actually want to see her. I want to catch up. I want to talk to her about, you know, all the things that we talk about. So now I'm not going to see her till next week, or maybe even 2 weeks, because maybe she's busy next week. So people will have to start to adjust, and sometimes they may push back. Sometimes you may lose them. Sometimes they may get angry. But if you want to reclaim your energy and you want to reclaim your sovereignty and you want to build a life that you are happy with and that you are proud of, you have to learn how to say no to things that are not aligned with you. And let's get into it a little bit deeper. Okay, when it comes to sex, you have to be able to learn to attune to your body. And this is a very difficult thing for a lot of women to do, because a lot of us are very a lot of us dissociate, you know. So anyone who's experienced any kind of trauma, it doesn't have to be sexual trauma, it can be physical trauma or even emotional abuse. A lot of the time we have a tendency to dissociate. This is very common with models, actually. I know that what's her name, Leanne Maskell. Okay, apologies for that. Excuse me, my battery died, and I actually have a spare battery for that very situation, but it doesn't seem to be holding its charge, so that's not great. That's not great, is it, Fujifilm, that your batteries aren't holding any charge when they're not in the camera? Okay, so moving on, my colour seems to look a little bit more saturated, so I'll see if I can fix that afterwards, but if I can't, I'm not very techie. Just please bear with me. Okay, so I was talking about the podcast. So Leanne Maskell, who is the author of The Model Manifesto, which is an anti-exploitation guide to the modeling industry, on her podcast she talked with her friend Rebecca Pearson, who's also a blogger and a model, about dissociation as a result of working in the industry. Now, these two girls are kind of, I think Rebecca is around the same age as me, so she's like an OG. She's been in the industry since long before the Me Too movement. And those of us who were modeling before the Me Too movement can testify to how horrific the industry was to work in back then. Like, bullying and abuse were so common. They were just normal. They were literally considered par for the course. Like, if you wanted to be a model, you just had to be able to tolerate people making objectifying comments about your size, about whether you fit into the clothes, about your skin color, about how so and so is looking on you, and talking about you as if you're not even there, or as if you're an object or an animal. And, you know, leaving you on set, and it still happens sometimes, leaving you on set for long periods of time, you know, where it might be too cold, it might be too hot, you might be not wearing any clothes or very few clothes, you might be wearing extremely heavy and uncomfortable clothes. So models become dissociative. We learn to dissociate from our body and just, you know, go somewhere else. So what that does is it tunes you out to what's actually happening in your body. And so I actually really had to, when I started practicing feminine embodiment, one of the things that really brought me back was reading the book Vagina. And I talked about that in my video on sacred sexuality, Aziz Ansari. That was one of the first videos that I made on sexuality, and it's, you know, have a look at it. I go into some quite sort of esoteric concepts which I now understand much better than I did then, but it's still a good video. And in that book, Naomi Wolf, she talks a lot about female sexuality and how different it is to male sexuality, and how, you know, women need to be warmed up slowly and we need a lot more attention. This is the role of foreplay. I don't like the term foreplay because it implies that, you know, coitus is the real thing. And I think all of it, I just think that, you know, sex is not a binary thing. You know, it's a kind of, it's a gradual thing that happens, and it starts long before you even get into the bedroom. And I talked about that in that video. But in order to have sex that is really pleasing to you as a woman, and enjoyable, you have to get in touch with your body, and you have to get in touch with your no. And I talked about in my other video, Red Moon Menstruation and the Lunar Eclipse, how the feminine collective, and particularly certain aspects of the feminine collective, but it is probably the wider feminine collective as well, but particularly anybody who's carrying any kind of ancestral trauma or any personal trauma, sexual trauma, things like that, carry codes in which they do not have good boundaries. And this is a direct result of sexual trauma, as anybody who's experienced it will know, or who's researched it will know, that it basically makes you compliant, and it erases your boundaries, it erases your sovereignty. So you don't know how to say no, you become compliant to predators. So, you know, it's commonly known that you know, victims of child sexual abuse will often become re-victimized again and again and again, because for various reasons, you know, I think the trauma basically becomes embedded in the, you know, the etheric, the emotional pain body, and so it becomes vibrationally attracted to predators. Can basically sense it, can sense the chink in your armor, and can sense that you don't have good boundaries. So learning to really become embodied, and it's difficult for people who've experienced trauma, because when you become embodied, you actually start to re-experience those traumas, and you have to actually process those emotions. And this is why I recommend that if this does describe you, you should consider joining my Kriya memberships and watch the video that I did on Kriya yoga, because it will help you detoxify all of that junk that's in your field, you know, and it will help you return yourself to the sovereign being that you already are. So when you learn to tune into what your body is actually feeling, you learn, okay, am I ready? Like, you know, if you're being intimate with a partner and he starts to do something that you don't feel ready for, you can say, no, not yet. But you have to, firstly, you have to understand how your sexuality works as a woman. And I do think that you need to read that book. And secondly, you need to know your worth, and you need to not be afraid to speak your truth and what feels good to you. And this is another reason why I don't think that women should be hooking up with people who don't care for them and don't respect them and haven't earned the right to be in your private temple. Your body is your temple. It's a sacred temple, and you need to be very discerning about who you allow into it, mainly so that you can have an enjoyable experience, because women, we do need a lot more attention to open us up, but also because you're taking on that person's energy, you know, you're taking on that person's DNA, you know, it's been scientifically proven that women hold on to the DNA of their previous partners. So, you know, that's fine if you're actually attracted to the person and you want to be with the person and you want to be intimate with the person, because that's, you know, how we evolve as humans, by integrating different lost parts of ourselves. That's why we become attracted to certain people. So, you know, that is a natural process that needs to happen. But if that person is embodying traits that you know to be toxic, and you know that person's no good, don't go there. Like, if they haven't earned the right to be there, just say no. So, you know, I'm not saying that it's an easy thing that's just going to happen overnight, but it's very important for us to reclaim our sovereignty by learning to be able to say no without apology and without excuse and without explanation. No, I'm not ready for that. No, that doesn't feel good. Try this instead. Or, you know, slow down. You know, it's fine. It's all good. Like, you're a goddess, and if somebody wants to be with you, you have to activate him into his godhood, into his kinghood, you know. Kinghood? Is that a word? I just made it up. But you've got to activate him into his best self, which is, you know, integrating his feminine, his care, his compassion, and his, you know, love for you. So yeah, and it's the same thing with any kind of energetic boundaries. You know, you've got to know your worth, and you've got to be unafraid of repelling that person from your field if they don't respect your no, because you are sovereign ultimately. Okay, that's it. That's all I need to say on that. And I got to go out now. I'm meeting my friend for dinner. So I will love you and leave you, soul fam. Thanks so much for watching. As always, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed and click the bell notification so you can get updated on all my new videos. If you want to book a session with me, then send me a DM on Instagram. My prices are currently very reasonable, and I would love to serve you with anything that you're having problems with that is within my area of expertise. And I will love you and leave you, and I'll see you in the next video. One love.